So you're very welcome to the 59th edition of our NCBI Labs live event, our penultimate, I'll get the word right, our penultimate show of the year. And we have a great show lined up for you today with plenty to talk about throughout the show. I think you're particularly going to enjoy listening to our special guest this week. But before we introduce her, let's let you know who else is joining us from NCBI Labs. Sean Doran has deserted us this week, although to be fair, it's with very good reason. He's got a number of projects ongoing at the moment. So he's got a pretty good reason for not being here. And PJ Corcoran, formerly known as JP, he isn't with us either, and for even better reason. But we look forward to having them both back with us on the show in the future. So without JP and Sean, our production team is basically down to Daniel doing pretty much everything today. But there's no need to worry about it, because as we found out on our last live event, Daniel is part of the WOW network. This will be a doddle to you, Daniel, surely.
I think I need the lads back. I'm not sure what buttons I'm hitting here, and I hope everybody out there can hear me.
The WOW network is really going to be disappointing if we don't get this right, Daniel.
That's true. That's true. They're probably all looking in today.
Well, I'm glad you're here. I'd be doing everything. I can barely get a sentence out, so hopefully we all go smoothly for the rest of it.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's it. And if anything goes wrong, we'll just catch it in post-editing anyway, so it'll be grand. So also with us this week is a familiar voice from previous shows. Actually, he's probably a fairly familiar device, or a fairly familiar voice to any of your smart speaker devices, who no doubt he's set off once or twice during some of his smart speaker demos. It's Joe Lonergan. Good to have you with us, Joe.
Thanks, Jude. Look forward to setting off a few more today.
I think you've another demo for us later on, don't you?
Yeah, I'll try my best to behave myself.
Yeah, that's it. We've warned everyone anyway, so that's it. The disclaimer's done.
Good stuff.
And last but not least from the Labs team is Adela Bulliman, a live event debutante who somehow has avoided the meet the team treatment so far, although it can't be far away now. That's something to look forward to, Adela.
Hi, Jude. Very excited to be here.
I'm sure you are, and now that you've said that and we've got you on a recording where we know that we can bring you on to meet the team.
I might have a meeting every single week at 2:30.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Get your excuse on tape as well. Record that one. Yeah, excellent. Very good. So that's our NCBI panel with us this week. But what are they here to discuss? Well, in just a moment, we're going to be talking to our special guest this week. Leonie Watson is a director at Tetralogical, a company who are specialists in the field of accessibility and inclusivity. So we're going to be talking to Leonie about some of the key developments over the years that have contributed to accessibility, as well as what's happening now to make the World Wide Web as usable as possible to as many people as possible. Later on in the show, we're going to be talking about Black Friday deals. They're well and truly underway at the moment. So Daniel and Joe are going to be talking about some of the deals that are out this week. We're going to see if there's maybe one or two that you might be particularly interested in picking up as well. And of course, we're going to have our regular tech news and tech tips coming up a little bit later on as well. So plenty to look forward to on the show today. But before we get started, just a reminder of how you can get in touch if you have any questions or comments throughout the show. There's two main options. You can contact us by using the question panel on Microsoft Teams if you're connecting through Teams, or you can just email us at labs@ncbi.ie. So let's get on with the show. And as we mentioned earlier, this week we have Leonie Watson, Director of Tetralogical, with us. You're very welcome, Leonie. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Jude. It's good to be here.
Now, I've watched quite a few of your presentations, Leonie, and quite a few on the team have actually watched a number of you. Not to put added weight on your shoulders here to set up too much, but we've maybe got a good idea about what sort of subjects you talk about. But maybe for those who don't know you, can we sort of start off by maybe just asking how you got started yourself in the field of accessibility?
You can. The short answer is by accident. I was a web designer in the 90s. I lost my sight in 99 over 2000 through that year. And although you might think that's what prompted me to get interested in accessibility, it wasn't. I had just taught myself how to use this thing called a screen reader that somebody had introduced me to, and I was getting the hang of using my computer without looking at anything. And I joined a forum for the JAWS screen reader users, and there was an email from someone at a new startup company who said, we've just built our very first website for our first client, and we followed these new web content accessibility guidelines 1.0, but the client hasn't got any budget for usability testing. So if any screen readers have got some time they'd be willing to spare, we'd really appreciate your feedback. And I remember thinking, well, I used to be a web designer, so sure, and I'm definitely a screen reader user now, so why not?
Yeah.
And I got in touch with them and got talking, and that company was Nomensa, a company that's still very much involved in the accessibility space, and accessibility was important to them, and it turned out they were just up the road from where I lived, so we kept talking. I started working for them and kind of discovered this whole idea about how we can build technology, design it better for not just people like me who can't see, but everybody out there.
Yeah, very good, excellent, and that really comes into the discussion that we're going to have through this as well. We're going to listen to one of your videos in just a moment, but before we do, it's kind of I think it's quite interesting. Just as I was looking through a number of your videos there's kind of various different advances along the way. You kind of give a little bit of a history of the various advances in technology that have made a real difference to accessibility. What would you say are some of the key ones that have allowed these accessibility and inclusivity functions to be more effective?
So for me, I think probably the biggest change in the past 20 or so years has been the ability to talk to things more. I don't know how you all feel, but I'm terrible at typing on my touch screen devices. I find it slow and really frustrating. So, 9 times out of 10, I'll use the dictate function to speak a text message or whatever, because it's just quicker. Much worse quality, don't get me wrong, but it's quicker. And the same thing, I've got an Echo in the house, and I'll ask it what the time is. I'll set timers on it. It reminds me about meetings, and the ability just to get at the information I want so much more quickly than I can through older means or other means. I think that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's actually the subject of the video that we're going to watch. So we might watch that at the moment, and we'll revisit this in a moment. Now, just to kind of let people know, there's actually a range of these videos, presentations that Leone has done that are available in various places, but YouTube as well, and on your own website as well, Leone, which we'll maybe ask you to give us the details of that in a moment as well. But just to kind of let people know that you can actually access these yourselves. This is almost like a little bit of a taster for you. We're going to play the first, I think it's about 9 minutes or so of one of the videos.
It's wonderful to be here at Web Stories. And today I would like to talk to you about how the front end has changed. It's actually been changing without us really noticing for longer than you might think. But a big part of our front end now is no longer about pixels and color and layout and visual design, but it's about conversational design. And we're choosing our words and thinking about the way they sound and the way we say things as our new front end. So if you think about the title of this talk, Talking to Me, there are different ways that you could say that, depending on how you wanted to sound, perhaps who you were. If I was Hercule Poirot, I might, for example, say, "You're talking to me, mon ami?" If I was Yoda, I might say, "Talking to me, you are." And then, of course, there's the original growling, rasping, "You talking to me?" from De Niro in the film that this quote. So we are thinking now about conversation as our front end. But as I said, we've actually been thinking about talking with technology for longer than you might think. We go back to the 1960s. IBM had a computer called Shoebox. That's one of the first examples of our efforts to talk with technology, and perhaps more importantly, to have technology do something sensible in response.
Last year, an experimental machine that recognizes the human voice was introduced to the press by its inventor, William C. Dersch, of the Advanced Systems Development Division.
Our efforts to communicate with, that is, control machines, have resulted in a demonstration voice recognition machine capable of operating an adding machine. Shoebox 2, the name given to it because of its small size, recognizes the 10 spoken digits and in addition 6 command words, 6, 7, 8, plus, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, minus, subtotal. The machine has understood my voice and caused the adding machine to correctly perform these arithmetical operations.
A machine that recognizes the human voice. Evidence of IBM's continued exploration into the technologies of tomorrow.
Now, time and technology have moved on since then. And the next thing that really started to make a difference in terms of the front end of voice interfaces was voice XML, a W3C technology that was created in the late 1990s, became a W3C standard for the first time in 2000. And as the name suggests, it's a variant of XML that enabled us to create structure to conversational interfaces. So the front end for voice XML interfaces became a voice browser. You'll most often have come across these in the form of the telephone menuing services that it seems almost every company in the world now prefers to offer instead of a human being on the end of the phone. But instead of having a conventional browser in the ways that we're used to, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, we, in this case, have a voice browser. And the XML structure looks remarkably familiar. We have, for example, a prompt element. Prompt, the thing that the technology will say to us to, well, prompt us for a response, is a very common theme in these voice interface architectures. So in this case, there's just simply a prompt element that is the way of marking up what it is we want the technology to say to the human being. There's also a menu element in voice XML that enables the technology to give the human a range of different options. You might often know these as the select one. What unfortunately this has led to is far too many services that give us experiences that sound a lot like this.
Hello, and welcome to hell. Please press 1 to make the wrong choice. Press 2 to listen to elevator music. Press 3 if you've lost the will. Or press 0 to hear these options again.
Because sadly, although the technology exists to create these things, the usability has often lacked a long way behind the technical capability. But all these things have the same thing in common. There is a basic architecture to a conversation, whether it's one human to another, or technology to technology, or technology to human. Somebody says something, they speak. Somebody else listens, they hear what's being said. They process what they've heard, they do something with that, and then they return a response that comes out usually in the form of speech. And that basic flow remains pretty unchanged when we translate from humans to technology. The technologies that we use to underpin that, though, are several different things. The first is automatic speech recognition. This is the thing that lets technology listen to what we're saying and translate that speech into text. As is often the case, text is really the kind of the most atomic level of information that these things deal with. Text is incredibly important. But this is just the start of the process. Apple have been working on automatic speech recognition for quite a long time, as have an awful lot of people, but they were one of the first to bring a product to market.
Macintosh, open letter. Macintosh, print letter. Macintosh, fax letter.
While everyone else is still trying to build a computer you can understand.
Macintosh, shut down.
We've built a Macintosh that can understand you.
Goodbye.
I'm still not actually convinced that any of us have got to the point where technology can really understand any of us, but I live in optimism. So what happens to that text? Well, there's natural language processing, and this is the piece of the process that takes the text, takes what someone has said effectively, and translates it into machine data. So it puts it into a format and a structure that can be used for the processing, the thinking part of the process. That machine learning then is the bit that might respond to a query. It's, if you ask a technology perhaps to do some arithmetic, it's the bit that will do the calculation. It will look up, the general knowledge question you've asked, whatever it might be. This is the kind of the equivalent of the mental thought processes that a human has in a conversation. And then we reverse the process. Natural language generation takes the response from your machine learning processing and converts it back into text. We then have the last piece of the puzzle, which is text-to-speech. As the name suggests, this takes that text and converts it back into speech, completing the conversational loop. So we've had a complete round conversation. Someone said something, it's been taken, it's been responded to, and an answer has come back. Text-to-speech has been around for quite a long time as well. One of the earliest example, again, comes from the 60s, and this time in the form of an example from the Bell Laboratories.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you.
And again, more recently, Amazon introduced the Echo. For any of you who have Alexa devices, this may now be a good time to turn them off.
Very good. And we're interrupted there, but that sounds like a good warning for Joe Lonergan's piece a little bit later on as well. So nice to double up on that. This must be a lovely interview for you to have, Leonie, to be able to sit back and listen to yourself talking for 9 minutes as well.
Yeah, you might think so. I couldn't possibly comment.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit easier anyway. So it's a great, really interesting set of videos. Actually, every time we were looking at them, it's really interesting just to see how it's developed and explained really well. But during some of those interviews or some of those presentations that you made, there was a number of concepts that came out. And actually, what we might do as well, we'll bring Adela into the conversation here as well, because Adela works with NCBI labs in sort of some of the work that maybe parallels some of your own, Leonie. So Adela will jump into the conversation wherever fits as well, if that's possible. But maybe I can just ask you about one or two of the concepts that kind of come up in some of your talks. I noticed on one of your talks, you spoke about the idea of accessibility being a creative challenge as opposed to a challenge to creativity. What do you mean by that?
So a common pushback against doing accessibility is that it means stuff's going to look bad, it's going to look boring, it's going to look ugly. Essentially, that if something's accessible, then all the good design stuff goes straight out of the window. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I actually can't take credit for that. It was a client I happened to be working with many, many years ago who actually came out with that line, but I just loved it so much that I've borrowed it and reused it many times since. And it's the idea that if we stop thinking about accessibility as a challenge to our creativity and flip that around, we can start to produce interfaces, products, services that are accessible and really good looking. And in fact, actually, if we look around, we've seen time and time again that constraint is actually a really useful thing in design terms. Some of the most amazing designs and most beautiful things have been created under great constraint. Michelangelo's statue of David is a really good example. He actually got that commission because 40 years before, somebody had failed to create the statue. And by the time it was given to him, they basically said, look, you've got to do this, but you've only got 2 years to do it in. And by the way, we want David to be positioned like this and to look like this, even down to, how his nose was going to be sculpted. Yeah. And yet, we've got something that has well and truly stood, the test of time in terms of, beautiful sculpture. So, it's all around this idea that actually a little bit of constraint is often a good thing for creativity. And certainly there's no reason why accessible and beautiful can't go hand in hand together.
it kind of motivates the creative, or spurs on the creative process quite a bit. Then it's interesting. We were actually just chatting about this yesterday. Yeah,
it's a prejudice I've never really understood, because I personally, when I look at a site, I love when there's like, you know, a white background and very little text and nice little headings and no things that scroll randomly or appear or carousels or anything like that.
Adele is not a fan of carousels. We were talking about that yesterday. And
I think anyone who knows me knows I hate carousels. How quickly am I meant to read?
Absolutely, yeah.
And especially doing accessibility audits. Anytime I see a carousel and I know I have to use JAWS on that site, I want to cry, because I just know it's going to be so terrible.
So is that kind of what you're getting at as well with this, Leonie, is that there's a challenge, and there's an issue, if you like, that can present it could be looked at as an obstacle, if you like, but now here within this constraint, here's the problem. Now how are we going to find a solution to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Very much that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You also have another one that you talk about, and again, this is kind of quite an interesting one for people as they listen to some of your videos. You mention on one of them the idea of perfect being the enemy of good. How does that apply?
So this is about the idea that I think there are lots of people out there, lots of people I've met, lots of people I talk to that really want to do more accessibility. And every time they try and make a start, they just become more and more aware about how much there is to learn and how much the decisions they make can affect people, really affect people. You know, and I think people kind of get a bit scared by that. And that's okay. So really that idea came out of just wanting to reassure people, look, learn one thing, choose to do one thing a bit differently every day, and keep building up your knowledge, and before you know it, you'll have made, you know, really big strides towards accessibility. So don't think about all the things you've got to learn and all the things that you've got to try and do. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be a little bit better than it was yesterday. And just don't worry too much, essentially.
There's almost an element of psychology in that anyway, isn't there? Because it's like, if you take on a big task and you'll only do it if you get it absolutely spot on. You'll never even start it.
Absolutely. But I think when it comes to accessibility, particularly, you know, people, because they're aware of the human impact, you know, on making the wrong decision, it could well mean that someone cannot use your product or service, you know, and depending on the product or service you're working on, that could be, you know, a very detrimental thing socially. You know, if you're, you know, working on an emergency service product or, you know, passport renewal or something, you know, important to a person's life. So I think that adds weight to, you know, the worry that people have, and that leads to a kind of inertia, but it shouldn't do, because every change you make for the good will help someone for the good. So that's worth doing. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's if everybody was easily put off by that idea of it having to be spot on, we wouldn't be where we are at the moment and being able to have the features that we have at the moment. So
exactly,
it's an important one.
Nothing in the history of technology ever has been perfect. So why we should try and apply that to accessibility is, it doesn't make any sense.
Wouldn't you love to be that inventor who sees the final thing absolutely perfectly in your mind and can and has the confidence of getting there straight away first attempt?
That'd be good.
Just kind of balancing that out. So that's sort of one side, and a principle that kind of maybe encourages people to try and get into it at least. But there's also the other side of it, that if somebody is trying to maybe make their site more accessible, the law of unintended consequences. How does that kind of apply or balance out what we've just been talking about?
Oh, all the time. You know, because none of us can know everything. You know, and that again is true of accessibility. It's true of, you know, every aspect of designing and building technology. We're talking about complex systems, and there are always unintended consequences. You make a decision and it's not until sometime later that you suddenly realize, damn it, completely got that wrong. You know, and even people like myself who've been working in accessibility for, you know, a couple of decades now, there is tons I don't know. There are people I go to find out different stuff, because there's just too much for any one person to really know and understand. And that's okay. So you just do what you always do with these things. Try to limit, you know, the odds of making the wrong decision. But
yeah.
if you discover you have, deal with it. That's the best we can do. That's all we can ever do.
It's funny, I kind of remember it's years since I did anything to do with coding, and I know that there's so many more things that people can use to create websites these days anyway. But just even from my very ancient memory of coding, I remember if I put the one line in the wrong place, I might have put it in, but it was treated very differently depending on where I put it in it. So I might have been trying to do the right thing, but actually I've preceded something else that needed to happen first, and it was just throwing everything into chaos. It could break something that was working absolutely beautifully beforehand, but I had one new feature in the wrong place and it wasn't working. Is that the kind of thing that we're talking about?
Yeah, very much so. Particularly, HTML is incredibly important to assistive technologies like screen readers and speech recognition tools. And the order you put those elements in, that can make a really big difference. The choice of element that you use makes a huge difference to both groups of people who use those technologies. But the thing you can do is get used to testing your stuff with both those technologies. Like there's a good chance you probably check it in a few different browsers. You maybe even check it on a couple of different devices, different screen sizes. Just get yourself into the habit of checking, with just a keyboard, with a screen reader. It'll take a bit of learning to kind of get into the habit of doing it, but it's again quite possible. You've already learned to do the difficult stuff by building something. Learning how to test it in different situations and with different tech is more than achievable by people in this industry. So do that, and if stuff starts to sound a bit peculiar, check in with someone who's got more experience. Validate it, but do what you always do. Course correct and move on.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is so much easier to catch something at that stage as well than if it's kind of built up around it. Maybe we can talk just for a little bit about the work with the W3C. Just for anybody who's not sure of what the W3C is, can you just tell us a little bit about it and what it's all about, what its goals are?
Sure. So it stands for the World Wide Web Consortium, hence W3C, and it was created back in the early 90s by Tim Berners-Lee, the person who invented the web as we know it. And it's an organization that is a membership of many different companies, about 400 or more at the present count. Everybody from small companies like mine through to the large, well-known brands like Google, Apple, Microsoft, Mozilla. And everybody works on what we loosely call web standards. So they're the organization that produces the web content accessibility guidelines, if you've come across those. They also produce things like CSS, SVG, JavaScript APIs for all sorts of different things like web payments, the vibration API, pushlock. I could go on. There are many, many of them, but most of the technologies that you use in the front end, to design and build things, probably had their origins or are still maintained at the W3C.
So an awful lot of the things that actually enable a website to be accessible for somebody is going to have been covered from a guideline that the W3C has established at some point. Is that just talking about, like, for example, sight loss accessibility?
No, so the web content accessibility guidelines aim to cover all disabilities. They could do better, to be honest with you, with cognitive disabilities, but the next generation, version 3, that will be coming along in a few years' time, aims to do something about that. But there are checks in there for all kinds of disabilities, physical, visual, hearing, and to some extent cognitive. So it aims to be pretty balanced. And the nice thing about the W3C is that all the other specs, the other standards that it works on, even the ones not relating to accessibility, they all undergo an accessibility review before they're published. So, even if it's something like HTML or CSS or something that in and of itself has nothing directly to do with accessibility, but still has an impact, that gets reviewed. And if there are any accessibility concerns with it, the idea is they'll get fixed before, a standard gets officially endorsed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's quite interesting just to hear about some of this, because for the average everyday user of the internet, even if you rely on some of the accessibility features, it's not necessarily the case that we'd be aware of what goes into that and what causes it to be actually accessible, and how much work has gone on in the past. Just talking about that, the web content accessibility guidelines, Adela kind of works with those quite a bit as well, so Adela might come into some of this, but is there any of the guidelines that you can kind of, and I'm not sure if it works quite this way. This is why Adela is with me today as well, because Adela's got a little bit more experience with this. But just, does it work this way, that there's kind of, is there specific guidelines that you can give us an example of and say, look, here's a guideline, here is the effect that it has, and without this guideline, it wouldn't be accessible?
Sure, I'm sure Adela's got plenty of examples too, but we could start right at the very beginning. So the very first guideline says that for any content that isn't text, there needs to be a text alternative. So the first thing you need to check is, if you've got an image on the page, is there a text alternative so that someone like me who can't see the image can still understand what it's there for, what it contains, what its purpose is. So that right from the very beginning is how it works. It takes a type of content or a piece of content and says, right, if this is the situation, what do you need to do to make it accessible? So in the case of an image, you need to provide the text description so someone who can't see the image still gets what it's all about.
Interesting, yeah.
And how important do you think these guidelines have actually been to the process of making the internet as accessible as can be?
I think they've been very, very useful. I do think that somewhere along the line we forgot that there's the word guidelines in the title. And they've been incorporated into legislation all around the world, and they've sort of become very hardline accessibility almost. And I do think that maybe hasn't turned out quite so well as we hoped it's done. But in and of themselves, they've been hugely influential. They are pretty much the go-to set of guidelines for anybody who wants to design and build things in accessible ways. Or for someone like you, Adela, who assesses websites for accessibility, they're almost always the set of guidelines that we use to say to another person or a company, yeah, you're doing okay, or actually not so much, you've got a bunch of things to fix.
Yeah. Would you see, like, which guidelines would be most important to you? Because like me personally, I see the same, like, kind of 4 issues would be the majority of bugs that would come up on a website, and they're the ones I always go back to. But does that mean that someone could really zone in on a few big points and make a site majorly accessible if maybe they don't have the time or the money to make something fully perfect?
Yes, and I think the W3C, has done something around this. They came up with a set of 10 easy checks, which they describe as your sort of first introduction to accessibility, and they've taken 10 of the guidelines, and I think actually between them they are a pretty good start for doing exactly what you've just suggested. They cover things like keyboard accessibility, which covers a huge number of people, sighted keyboard users, not sighted ones, all kinds of assistive technologies and so on. There's stuff in there about how images are presented. I think they've got some in there about moving and distracting and flashing content, which can be problematic for both partially sighted people and people with different cognitive disabilities. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to simplify and start somewhere, and those 10 checks are as good a place to start as any.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Yeah, it's interesting just to hear that, because even for me, I don't do a lot of that working, so it's interesting just to hear that you can actually scale it down and get some of the key parts right. Are there some very obvious ones, like the ones that you mentioned there, Adela, a moment ago? What would be the kind of 4 issues that you find in your work?
The biggest, so first of all, alt text on images. People don't tend to put in alt text. Labeling on interactive elements like buttons or so on. You'll go on a site and there'll be 10 times you'll see a button that says read more. But someone with sight loss, that can just be really difficult to understand what you're reading more about. Having a label on that would make everything so much easier, because it would say read more about the live event or so on.
Yeah.
But these are always the issues that kind of come up a lot. And what I think is really interesting is that if people coded in a way that you're meant to almost. The way you learn when you go to college and your professor's like, oh, you need to put a name and you need to put alt text and all that. And if you stick to those kind of good coding practices, you actually end up being quite accessible. So that was always interesting to me, the fact that developers don't seem to kind of stick to those good coding practices anymore.
Yeah, that is quite interesting, because even from the element of kind of universal design, that it's not, you're not trying to build in accessibility afterwards where possible. You're trying to just make it inherent in the process. It's quite,
and even just in terms of SEO and coming up as much as possible when people search for you, it's good to have those practices anyway. But I am glad accessibility is becoming more common, because I think it'll help in a lot of ways on a lot of different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and obviously the more compliance there is, there's kind of there's requirements obviously on websites now, but just in terms of the more compliance there is, then the more people are able to actually access the information that somebody has spent time and effort and work actually putting up there in the first place. So yeah, it's interesting just to talk about some of those. If somebody was to want to find out a little bit more about those guidelines, or to get a little bit more information on them or advice, what would they be able to do?
Well, you could go and have a look at the guidelines, but I'm not sure I'd necessarily recommend that as your starting point. Unfortunately, they are not the best written things you ever came across.
Right.
So when you go and take a look at them, first off, they can seem pretty overwhelming and quite confusing. But there are a lot of really good blogs out there that have all sorts of posts that cover, introductions, primers, even down to a sort of deep dive on some of the different guidelines or the individual checks as well. So just take a look. There's a lot of good information out there. Just searching will turn up tons of different things that will give you an entry point that suits you.
Excellent. Yeah, and as always, if anybody's looking for more information on that, you can always get in touch with us on labs@ncbi.ie, and we can try and point you in the right direction as well with some of those things. Leonie, it's been interesting just talking to you about some of the, obviously we've kind of stayed away from overly technical elements of it, but what would you say, like, as you're kind of taking the work that you've been involved in for the last number of years, what would you say is the thing that kind of gives you the most satisfaction in your work?
Seeing something get better. It's really as simple as that, and that hasn't really changed at all. There's something very, very satisfying about working on something directly, or helping an organization or a team take a look at the thing that they're building or that they're responsible for, and kind of pulling it apart and putting it back together in ways that work better for more people. It's just really nice. And it's not often, I think, many of us get to say we're in a job that really does some good in the world. And it's really nice to have a job that does that, and to work with great people that really want to try and make a difference. Doesn't always work. We don't always succeed. Technology is complicated. There are budgets, there are deadlines, there are lots of different pressures, but just to be amongst people who are trying to make a difference is great. To see them succeed is even better.
You mentioned a little earlier about the legislation as well, and not everyone listening might know about them, but it's a kind of law that's come in, I think, in the whole EU, that government bodies and public state funded bodies should have their websites be accessible. Do you think this has helped in any way towards accessibility, or has it more scared people a little bit?
So it's interesting. We've had legislation actually in this country that covers everybody, public, private sector, for 25 years, 26 years now. But it doesn't specifically say what standard of accessibility you have to meet. The legislation that you're talking about came in 2018, and it was very specific. It said you had to meet what's known as AA standard from the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And I think if I look at the past 2 or 3 years, there was a huge rush to meet the first deadline, which was when websites, public-facing websites for these organizations had to be accessible. We got lots of queries coming into my company saying, "Can you help? Can you help? Can you help?" And then by the time the second deadline came along, which was internal systems, intranets, and tools that employees are using, there was still quite a bit of a rush, but it wasn't really, that sort of hectic. And then the third and last deadline came past, which was all mobile apps had to be made accessible, and it kind of went past with barely a mention. And I think the problem is that it's all very well saying, you've got to meet these standards, but the problem is what happens if somebody doesn't? You can't suddenly take down a central government website. You can't even take down a tiny little, borough council website, because too many people need that to be there. They rely on it. So you end up with this sort of, so what problem? We don't live in the United States where you're going to get sued for goodness knows what. Actually, I'm kind of quite glad about that in most respects, but it does mean that our legislation is a little bit without teeth in Europe and the UK, and perhaps a bit too much to the other extreme of the US. We could do with just a few more Nashers in there, maybe.
Yeah, interesting. And I'd say though, when you do see the progress in that as well, while it causes its own frustration, that's probably to a degree a source of satisfaction as well, when you do see if there's developments in legislation, even though it's imperfect at the moment in terms of actually getting it done. That must be quite a satisfying thing to see as well.
It is, and if for no other reason than that it gives everybody a bit of a prod, and gives it some more visibility, however briefly, that can only be a good thing. The more people that turn their attention to it, let's take the win and keep going.
Yeah,
I am glad the legislation's come in, but I think if you look at America and a lot of the kind of plugins or companies that work with accessibility, they really push the fact that please be accessible or you will be sued for discrimination. And I kind of don't like that concept, because it takes away from the fact that actually, no, this was about helping people and equality. I don't know what your opinion might be on that, Leonie.
No, I think you're right. And there's sort of lots of problems that emerge out of that kind of culture. One is that they're seeing a massive increase in what I can only describe as ambulance chasing cases. Lawyers who run a quick automated test, which is okay, but imperfect generally. They'll then send a threatening letter to the organization saying, look, we found issues on your website and here's the report to prove it. And they have no intention of actually going to court. They barely have any intention of representing anybody legitimate. They just want to settle out of court for maybe $5,000-$10,000, move on to the next one, and that's not healthy. I think there's another problem and you mentioned, I think, Adela, these sort of overlays and tools that are busy selling themselves as a protection against being sued. They're actually nothing of the sort. If anything, they're causing as many problems, both legally speaking and from a user experience point of view. But again, the fact that the legal situation has led to the prolific
I think
nature of these
a lot of
tools.
the plugins have great kind of advertising as well, where they kind of say, oh, we'll fix every single problem you have, but it's really not the case. And I think I read one of your articles as well about like the lack of security and GDPR around some of them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I was pretty horrified to discover quite how much data that one of those tools was collecting about me as an individual, where they had absolutely no need to collect 90% of it. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Adela. Then they're not a good advancement in our industry.
I'm glad you agree. I thought I might be a bit biased as a manual accessibility tester.
Not at all. And you're not alone. If you haven't come across it before, there's the overlayfactsheet.com, where I think now close to 600 people from across the accessibility community have signed it to say, look, this is what's wrong with this situation. So you're definitely not alone.
Yeah,
that's good to know.
Very good. Yeah, that's good to know. It's really interesting chatting to you, Leonie, and it's been interesting just hearing your views on some of these things, and also just the development, your vast experience with it as well. We're kind of we're probably pushing the time a little bit here. We've kept you longer than we said we would, but maybe just before we let you go, could we ask you just what are your expectations or hopes for the next few years in terms of advancements that might be made?
I think really the thing I would most like, two things actually. I would like conversational interfaces to get better. At the moment, we're living in a bit of a bubble where we all expect talking to technology to be like it is in Star Trek. Yeah. And the underlying technology just isn't there. And I actually don't think people who are, designing these interfaces have really got to grips with how to do the proper design kind of flow on them either. So I hope that will really improve. The other solution I would like us to find, and this is a much bigger one, and it's going to take a lot of research and some very deep pockets, is how to make virtual reality or XR, as it's known on the web, accessible to more people with disabilities. There's lots of pockets of research going on, but it's just huge. It's such a paradigm shift from everything we've tried before that, there's a whole ton of work to do. But I'm mostly envious because at the moment, as a blind person, just nothing I could do to get involved in that, and I miss it. I want to know what it's like. So that's the thing I want to get solved in the next few years. But
well, I'll tell you what, in a few years' time, when we start to see some of these advances, we'll have to have you back with us on the show as well. It's been brilliant talking to you.
You're on.
I really appreciate you coming onto the show today. Certainly appreciate the insight into all the work that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that what we get is actually inclusive and accessible, and the developments that could still happen. So thank you again.
It's been really,
Leonie.
really interesting.
Great. It's good to talk to you, Jude, and you too, Adela. Thank you.
Lovely to have you with us on the show. So really enjoyed that, chatting to Leonie Watson, Director of Tetralogical there. And I'm glad to have had Adela with me on the call there as well. So thanks for joining in there, Adela.
Thanks for having me on. That was great.
Don't worry,
really
we'll definitely have you back. We'll make that promise and combine promise and threat at the same time here. We'll have you back. Good stuff. So that was Leonie Watson, and lovely to talk about that. If you want to listen back to that, of course, don't forget you can listen back on YouTube or any of your podcast platforms that you normally access the live events on, and you'll find that very interesting. But we're going to move on now with our show. We're going to move into the Black Friday sales, and Daniel and Joe are going to be talking about that with us. Just before we start looking at some of the specific deals here, can I ask just Daniel and Joe, maybe start with Joe here. Just can you give us your overall impression of Black Friday these days, kind of recent years? Is it as good as it used to be?
Hi, Jude. No, I don't think Black Friday is what it used to be. It's still there, I suppose, as a marketing ploy to get people in a frenzy and buy stuff before. In America, I suppose it all started, and it's coming up to, I think people give presents on Thanksgiving and stuff like that. But I don't think it is what it used to be. And there was a Which article which reviews products, technology products mostly. They had an article up that said 9 out of 10 things that are in Black Friday have been either the same price or cheaper in the previous 6 months. But some of the reasons because of that, some of the reasons for that is there's all sorts of different sales at different times of the year. Summer sales, January sales, little pop-up sales, all this kind of stuff. Amazon have loads of different sales all times of the year. So I suppose that's part of the reason for that. But I think the people that are biggest into the Black Friday probably is Amazon and some of the other technology companies and the computer shops and electrical stores. They're the people that are biggest into it, really. Yeah. So that's probably where you'll get most of your deals, you know.
So a lot of the deals that you guys have been looking at have been ones that are actually deals, and they're actually decent prices, as opposed to maybe the big flashy things that might seem like 40% off, but actually it was that price already this year.
Well, it's difficult to find like really good deals, you know what I mean? But we found some, and it's all down to the individual, really. If you want to go and find something there yourself, you will have to get on Amazon or Google or Curry's, Power City PC World, that kind of thing. So it's up to the individual, but we'll just give you a taster of some of the things to look for.
What I might do then is I'll hand the floor over to you both. If I hand over to Daniel for the moment, and you're going to take us through some of the deals that are available.
Yes, Jude. So we've been out shopping this morning, I suppose, and unfortunately we didn't have the company credit card with us. So all we could do is what we call down the country tire kick and have a bit of window shopping. So I suppose, first of all, something a bit close to home with our audience is the ORCAM offers that Sight and Sound have. And they've quite a good deal on at the moment the Orcam My Eye Smart, the Orcam My Eye Pro, and there's also the Orcam Smart Read. So the 3 of those products from Orcam are on offer. And I suppose, Joe, I'll tell the audience a little bit about what these products do. The My Eye Smart, now that contains basically it's a camera, I suppose, that sits on to either your existing spectacle glass frames, or you get a frame included in the box. And the camera basically, it reads text and smart reading features. So that's included in, that's what you get with the My Eye Smart. There is a more advanced one then, I suppose, as the name suggests. You've got the My Eye Pro, which contains obviously all the features that the Smart does. But what it also does into the bargain is it recognizes faces, identifies products, banknotes, such as your euro notes, it'll do some foreign currencies as well, barcodes, color identifier, telling the times, and some orientation features as well. Now, so I suppose this is where the savings come in, the My Eye Smart. So that's the first one I spoke about, just a basic text reading feature and smart reading feature. That was retailing at $3,240. It's now down to $2,988, so a little over €250 to be saved on that particular purchase. The My Eye Pro, which is the one that comes with all the bells and whistles, quite a substantial reduction here. It's down from 4,560 down to 3,588. So quite a bit of a saving there. And then the little Read Smart, which is a handheld device for reading text off paper, and that's down from 2,520 down to 2,100. So that's what I've found with Sight and Sound on the Orcams. Quite good offers there for someone who was seriously considering purchasing a unit, you know. So it is time, I suppose, if you want to grab a saving, to grab it now. Then we went to Amazon, Joe, the Echo Dot.
Yeah.
A device close to your heart.
Echo Dot, yeah, it's a great smart speaker, you know. So anyone that's a fan of that kind of device, they're roughly, I think I seen really cheap ones, something like the 12 sterling, 12 pounds. So that be converted over to euros, probably 15 or 16 euros, you know. Yeah. So you can get them as cheap as that now. Most of the different Echo models are down roughly half price. And Amazon Fire Sticks are something like 25 euros off as well. So that's the kind of deals. But it mightn't. Sometimes deals are a little bit different for different people, as they can give you exclusive deals as well. So if you log into your account, prices might be. Sometimes they're a little bit different for different people. So they might offer you a better deal on certain
loyalty,
products.
Joe.
Well,
kind of a customer loyalty thing.
I think. I wouldn't call it customer loyalty. It's probably depends on what products you normally buy off them, and they'll say, look, we'll maybe pin out a few exclusive deals for certain customers. But I don't think it's called customer loyalty as such. They call it your Amazon exclusive deals, but maybe it's their version of customer loyalty.
They're tracing what you buy and suggesting.
Yeah, a bit of an algorithm involved, I think. You know, an algorithm to make suggestions on the type of products that you normally buy. So, yeah, sometimes
I was wondering why, Joe, because you did say there the Dot was going for £12 sterling, and when I logged in, they were only giving it to me for £19 sterling. So obviously they like you more, Joe.
Maybe that was it. It could have. This was a check yesterday now, so price can change. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Yeah, and smart plugs there. I've seen Amazon smart plugs they were $12.50 or something as well, sterling. So so prices can go up or down, and as I said, certain prices can be a little bit different for different people, but in general there is a general price.
Yeah, I suppose being familiar to Amazon, now not everybody might be familiar with them, but if you are considering shopping on Amazon, their site that's most used through Ireland is the amazon.co.uk, which by its name check does suggest it's UK based. So I suppose it's important maybe to find out about this, where it comes now that the UK or outside the European Union. So there's a little bit of a change to how we maybe would have shopped before. Isn't that right, Joe?
Yeah. So some products you may buy, you could get an email later on to say you might have to pay something like €5 customs, and it depends what price range you're going for. So if it's under €50, like you could get an email about paying €5 customs. So be wary of that. Some people might think emails that come in from On Post or whoever's delivering the stuff, it could be a scam email, but then you realize you don't get the product. You will have to click on a link and pay your customs on certain products. You'll find out afterwards, fairly quickly after you order the product. It could be a day or two after you order the product, you get an email about. But there is some products that are exempt as well. So just look at the delivery options, terms and conditions before you purchase the product.
Yeah, that's very good.
And some of your Amazon emails as well. They did send emails out to everybody, just give them some, so buyer beware tips, just about the customs and the VAT, the difference between English VAT and the Irish VAT. 23% for Irish people, 21% I think for
20. 20 in the UK.
20 is it? Yeah, 20 in the UK. Indeed, yeah, go back to that Amazon dot thing. The prices I've given for the dots could be different. There's second generation and third generation as well. So the £12 one could have been for the second generation, whereas the £19 one could have been for the third generation dot. You're going back. That might have been the difference there. But as I said, look, it'll have a good browse through the offers, and you might find one that suits yourself.
Yeah,
find it.
Indeed. And Joe, for some people maybe with an Alexa or an Echo Dot already, if they're regular customers of Amazon, they might have a couple of deals directly to their speaker.
So I can. Would you want me to show you that now, or we'll leave that at the end?
Yeah.
We'll work away. We'll have it as part of our tip here.
Well,
mid conversation.
So, for example, you can shop for stuff just with your speaker. You can enable it in settings to actually send it to you. I don't do that. It's probably a bit more safer to go online afterwards, after you've put it into your basket, and you can double check, make sure you have the right delivery address and all that kind of stuff set up. Because I have a couple of delivery addresses on my account, so I prefer just to put it in the basket and then go on and complete the transaction online. But you can say things to your smart speaker. I'll press the button on top. Rather than activating everybody's speaker, I'll press the circular button on top. And I'll say, and then I'll ask the question. So I'll say, what Black Friday deals are exclusive to me?
Here are the top Amazon deals. Amazon Smart Plug works with Alexa. After Alexa exclusive savings of £2. It's £12.99, including VAT. With delivery by the 2nd of December, you can say, add to basket. Or
next.
Here is your next deal. LifeX Mini, B22, Wi-Fi Smart LED light bulb, multicolor. After Alexa exclusive savings of £9.98, it's £24.99, including VAT. With delivery by the 2nd of December, you can say, add to basket. Or, next.
Add to basket.
Okay, I added it to your Amazon basket for review. To purchase, say, buy it now. To hear another deal, say, next.
Next.
Here is your next deal. Panasonic wet and dry cordless epilator with 8 attachments. It's £75 up.
Stop. So a Panasonic epilator, I don't know how that got in there, but anyway, you get the idea. So you can send it to your basket. Then you can go onto Amazon.co.uk and you can read the description of the product or whatever you want, and complete the transaction. And as I said, if you set that up properly, you can actually buy the product straight from the speaker and be sent to your address.
That's very good.
I like to check it out, maybe read a couple of reviews, whatever, that kind of thing. So you see, there's a LifeX, great brand of smart light bulbs. Even Apple have them for sale in their shops, down to £35 sterling. So that's the kind of deals, and apparently that's exclusive to me. I'd love to see what other people's price they get that for.
Yeah.
They're bigging it up and making it exclusive to me. But that's what they say, and it's a deal anyway. It's at least it's a few bob off. I think it's actually £24 sterling, down from £35 sterling. They're the kind of Black Friday deals they're getting, and I know maybe in previous sales they were probably the same, but that's what they are for Black Friday. So you get the idea. It can be handy, and you can also ask the speaker to search for a certain product, and it'll maybe narrow it down to a couple of options, and you can also go through it and say next, or you can maybe say that's not the right product and ask for it again by a different name or whatever, you know. So you can also do a lot through the smart speaker without going online and browsing Safari or Google Chrome, or if you're having difficulties that way, at least you can browse some of the details with your smart speaker, which makes it quite kind of easy, you know.
It's fantastic, you know. I'm just thinking for somebody maybe that, you know, is planning to get a couple of things together, just add about 3 or 4 items there into the basket, right? Get onto the laptop, get in on the site, and it's all there in the basket. You can review it, make sure it's right, and if you're happy with what's there, buy now and you're good to go and you're out the gap, instead of browsing around. Maybe it could make, you know, what could be an hour and a half shopping experience turn into half an hour.
Exactly, like, you know, it's certain, especially for things like smart plugs, that you don't have to spend time looking at loads. Smart plug does what it does. It says in the tin, you know what I mean? So, like, for example, I putting up the Christmas tree soon. Instead of reaching around the Christmas tree looking for that plug and getting prodded by all the pine cones, at least we can say to the smart speaker, turn off the Christmas tree. You know what I mean? When you're going to bed or whatever. So that's a useful thing for a smart plug, and the cheaper you get them, the better, of course.
Exactly. I suppose staying with the online retailers, the Ring.com website, they do the Ring doorbells, and I came across their entry-level doorbell with a power adapter included for $49.99, a saving of €35. Maybe can you tell us a little bit more about the Ring doorbells, Joe?
Yeah, so Ring doorbells, they're, as far as I know, they're a company that are owned by Amazon as well. So they will connect to your smart speaker. I actually have one myself. I can say things like, Alexa, talk to the front door.
Okay.
And then it listens, Alexa, stop. And then it listens to the ambient noise outside, or if somebody is outside, you can identify them by saying who's there, or whatever, you know. So you can kind of screen the people before you enter the door. So that's the idea of a Ring video doorbell. By connecting to your smart speaker, it makes it very accessible. You can also connect it to your phone and have it on the Ring app on your iPhone, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a product I'd also recommend if people are interested in smart doorbells. They also have smart security cameras. You'll see they have 52% off smart security cameras with motion sensors, and as far as I know, there's microphones on those as well, so you could listen out to what's going on at home if you're away, and I suppose just for security reasons, €10 a month, you can actually even record stuff that's going on outside your house and inside your house. So it's a good security option also, rather than paying for some companies which are extortionate prices. So that might be an option for people.
Very good. After that, Joe, I went across to Microsoft, and the Microsoft Surface Pro I found directly on their site. If I just get it here at the moment. Yeah, sorry. The starting price is now $734, down I think from $929, and they're giving obviously the free upgrades to Windows 11 as well if you get that. If you get that, of course you can configure them. They will say when you go on their site at first that they're giving you savings up to 510, but their actual basic model you're getting €185 off, so it's $919 down to $734. Surface Pro, in your opinion, Joe?
Yeah, excellent. Kind of a hybrid tablet laptop. and you can connect Bluetooth keyboards to it, and it's really good. It's like it's a full version of Windows installed. Works really well with Office, and I've never had an issue with. I have one myself, and I never found an issue with it being working slowly. Has a solid state drive, plenty of RAM on it usually, and it's probably the one you spot out, at least an i7 processor, I presume. So yeah, it's a very good machine, and it's very light as well, and a long battery life. So the battery life, as far as I know, on the 8, it's probably a minimum of 10 hours. So I don't have the 8 myself. I think it's a 6 I have, but that used to have a good battery. But over the years, the battery does reduce in time. So, but that's just the same with any product. But yeah, for I suppose the pros of it anyway is yeah, it's solid state drive. It's got a good battery life, and it's small and light, and it's a power device.
Exactly. Yeah, so somebody who might be considering that, there's a few pounds to be saved this Black Friday. The final of the online ones that I had a look at from Apple, and Apple are a little bit different in how they celebrate Black Friday. They have a 4-day event which starts on Black Friday the 26th and runs all the way through to 27th, 28th, and Cyber Monday. I suppose Black Friday's poor cousin. The technology deals are all supposed to come out on the Cyber Monday the 29th of November. So just a quick twirl of the offers that they're given with iPhones, and you get a €50 Apple Store gift card on iPhone 12, 12 mini, and the iPhone SE 2020. On the AirPods, depending on the model you choose, you're getting up to €75 Apple Store gift card. The Apple Watch, they get a €50 Apple Store gift card there again, and up to €100 gift card coming with the iPad Pros, so the iPad Pro 11 and 12.9. And if someone's looking to get a Mac notebook or a Mac Mini, €100 gift card, and €200 one if you go for the 27-inch iMac. So that's just some of the Apple deals that are online. Oh yeah, the Beats as well, they're giving a €50 gift card. Probably what I would imagine is, somebody who's planning on getting getting a particular device off Apple, they might turn around and re-gift the gift card to somebody else who might get use out of it. Somebody who's into buying their films or their music or whatever from the Apple Store. So that's Apple. Next, we'll go across to the bricks and mortar shops. DID Electrical. This is one I found myself, Joe. Somebody who might want a second monitor for either hooking their laptop into, at a home station, or hooking onto their existing computer. DID Electrical, they have a 27-inch Hewlett-Packard monitor, down from $219 to $149. That is good, I think.
That's very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back there to the Apple devices there. Yeah, the €50. I suppose it is something. It's a good discount on the if you're getting it off the Apple watches and things like that. I suppose it's about 10% off those products. But don't we sell the Blind Shell Classic 2 as well? €50 cheaper than anywhere else, as far as I know. NCBI.
We do, yeah.
For those people who like button phones.
That's right. For the button phone, the Blind Shell Classic 2 is currently €50 lower than directly from the manufacturer's website. That's another good phone that actually we're going to be in one of our future live events here. Jude will be telling us about it now after we finish here, and that we will be talking with Blind Shell, who have released a new Blind Shell 2 phone. So definitely listen out for that one coming up.
Yeah, and Daniel, we don't want to leave Google out. I suppose there's a couple of things. Yes. I think on their website, Google Nest Audio was €20 off, so as I remember, down from 100 down to 80. And then on Curry's, I seen the Google Chromecast with Google TV was 70 down to €49, so down to €50 basically.
That's very good.
So a Google Chromecast TV, it's great streaming device. You can put Netflix, Disney Plus on it, and it has a full talkback screen reader installed. So you should be able to get around.
Is there a remote that you can speak to it as well on that now?
Yeah, and you can use the wake word. Will I say it? I will. Hey Google. You can use the Hey Google wake word to say stuff like play Mickey Mouse on Disney Plus or whatever, you know. So
you had to get it in there, Joe. After
I had to get in there, yeah. I know.
After taking all the precautions of putting using the button on the speaker earlier.
Yeah, I was hoping Sean would be listening. I might set off his phone or something like that. Yeah.
And another bricks and mortar shop, Harvey Norman. They have a Wi-Fi extender, TP-Link one. I think it's €25 down to 15. Wi-Fi extender, good investment, Joe.
Yeah, be useful. I suppose with all of us told to work from home again. We got let out for a while there, and now we're told to work home again, work from home again. So you could be thrown out to the garage by the wife or whatever, and either internet mightn't be as good out there. So you can plug in the Wi-Fi extender, and it might help you a bit in that department. Improve the Wi-Fi through thick walls, or maybe even in the office shed or the outdoor office, something like that. So the Wi-Fi extender, there's probably home plugs out there too to do the same job, but that was one of the deals we spotted.
Yeah, it is, and that's going from Harvey. So it's just staying with Harvey Norman. The TileMate 2022 new version. That was €25 down to 18. Tell us a little bit about the TileMate.
TileMate. It's an object. I suppose it's a finder device. You can attach to your keys or other objects that you might lose regularly. Maybe possibly you could tape it to the remote control or something like that. But it has a range. It connects to your smart device via Bluetooth, and it has a range of approximately 76 meters. So which is a decent amount, considering if you drop something out in while you're doing the gardening or something. It is waterproof, well, to a certain extent. There's an IP rating of certain waterproof on it. So it might survive a few showers of rain. You know what I mean? So if you drop something out in the garden, and you can press a button in the app, and it'll play a sound, and you can locate the device. A little bit like Apple AirTags as well.
That's what I was just about to say. Yeah, it sounds like a competitor of the Apple tags, and they also do a credit card sized one. I found that €30 down to 24.
Really useful, actually. Yeah, you can slip it into your wallet, and maybe some phone cases have little credit card holders at the back. You could slip it into the back of your phone, or if you didn't have Find My app on certain smartphones, you mightn't have the Find My app, or maybe some of the Android ones maybe not have that ability, or you mightn't have two devices to find your phone. So they're useful things you might use the credit card the device TileMate for.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the tile for the credit. Is there a name on the tile one for that?
It's Tile Slim.
Tile Slim, that was it.
Yeah, you can call it, yeah. So you have TileMate and Tile Slim. Yeah. And I got briefly back to the TileMates. They also do kind of a bulk pack where I think you can get 3 or 4 in a pack, and it's at a discount price as well from Harvey Norman in his Black Friday sale. So definitely worth checking out some of those products. Oh, just before we leave Harvey Norman's shop, the Nokia 105, Joe.
Nokia 105, excellent. It's something similar to the 3310 we had back in the day. It is.
Yeah, this is the reiteration of the Nokia push button phone that we all had loved so dearly. Actually, I think some of them that we might have charged there in 1999, there's still a bit of battery left in it.
That's a really good phone to give to your 10 or 12-year-old when they go out with their friends. Although they might be embarrassed to take it out in front of their friends, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Someone might look at what's that? All those buttons do.
How do you use that?
So yeah, this little Nokia, it's down from €30 down to 22. Little bit of a saving there. Even for the novelty factor, I think doesn't play the Snake game. Everybody loved that, didn't they?
Oh, it's a great game.
Great game. Adela.
This is great crack. I'm staying for the whole event.
So Adela, have we given you some gift ideas for the Christmas coming up?
Maybe I might have a little look at Amazon later.
Yeah, there's a few nice little bits and bobs that we've covered there. Look, I suppose we're coming to the end of this segment of the stuff that I found. I really didn't have a fierce amount of time to go shopping. It was just nice to get across a couple of websites and see what the different retailers, our local Irish retailers, as well as, I suppose, the more international ones that we're familiar with in the likes of your Apple and Amazons and Googles. But we do have a few home retailers that are well worth a visit as well. They do try and provide great local offers as well, so it's worth going to the bricks and mortar store and checking those out too.
One excuse for buying Irish is at least you'll avoid some customs charges, I suppose.
Yeah,
that's one excuse to buy Irish.
Yeah. Which is as well worth mentioning as well. So quite a few good deals there. So thanks for taking us through that, Daniel and Joe. Good to hear about that, and it can be like a little bit of a shortcut for people as well, just to hear about what the deals are. So thanks for looking up at those deals as well. Mm-hmm. Very good. So we're just about at the end of the show, and we've just time very quickly to cover our tech news. So first up in tech news, probably a good time to remind you about an event that we've spoken about before in our live events. We talked about the Site Tech Global event. Well, that's on next week. So that's December 1st and 2nd. As we mentioned previously, the idea behind the event is to really showcase and even more so provide an opportunity for discussion of the cutting edge technologies that can be harnessed to make advancement in assistive technology. So some of the speakers include Scott Adams of Google, who's the product manager of Lookout, Jeffrey Bigham, research lead for AI accessibility at Apple. You've got Will Butler from Be My Eyes, Sukrita Chadra from the product manager at Spotify, and Ned Desmond, of course, the founder of Site Tech Global, and plenty more as well. So if you want to get the full details there, you can go to sitetechglobal.com, and it's free to register. So it's a free event that you can enjoy as well. So that event is on the 1st and 2nd of December, and the agenda is on the website. Next up, there's a new feature in Windows, I believe, Daniel.
Yeah, well, more Microsoft Office to be truthful. It's across all versions of Microsoft Office, so whether it's the 365 or the 2016, 2019 versions, or even the new 2021 version that's coming on stream. It now allows you to enable dark mode, and it doesn't matter which of the Microsoft Office programs you go into to do this. So whether you go into Excel and do it, or whether you do it in Word, or whether you do it in Outlook, it copies across to all the rest. So if I change the appearance of Office in Microsoft Word, it's going to change it in Excel, and it's going to change it in Outlook. So you don't have to keep going into each of these little programs to do this. What we've got is, I suppose, it's not officially called Dark Theme, but it's Dark Theme. So you go into any of your Office programs, go straight for the File, and you go for Options, and you're brought straight away to the General tab. And just a wee bit down that page, there's a section called Personalize Your Copy of Microsoft Office. Now, this is newly added here, so you mightn't have come across this before. And in there, you can just tab the way down. And what you've got to just tab, I think it's twice down. Well, I'll just bring it up here. It's tab down three to four times. You can change your Office theme to black. You have dark grey, you have white. Use your system setting, or colourful. So the black one there is, I suppose, what we'd refer to as dark mode. So that's in there as well. What it does then, it'll change the background to black and your text to white without interfering with the icon colors or the icon shapes or anything like that. So it is true dark mode for all of your Office programs. Well worth taking a look at that. And I suppose one thing I'll mention about it, I know it's probably more suitable for the low vision community, but for anyone who might be using a portable device such as a laptop or the Microsoft Surface Pro, even enabling that will help stretch out the battery life, because darker screens take less power to
Yeah,
illuminate.
interesting. Yeah.
So the more dark mode you've got going on, the less power is going to be consumed from the battery or from your regular power source, and therefore you get longer life out of the battery, and you're doing a little bit for the environment as well in fighting climate change.
Yeah,
How about
handy to
that?
know as well. Yeah, that's it. That's thrown in for a bonus there, is it?
It is.
Excellent. So really good. So that's handy to keep track of as well. Very good. So that brings our show to a close today. Hope you've enjoyed the discussion. Please do let us know as well if there's anything that you'd like us to cover in a future show as well. So just a reminder that if you need technology assistance, you can get support from the Labs team from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday on 1800 911 110, or you can email labs@ncbi.ie, or if you want to avail of wider NCBI services, you can call 1850 33 43 53 or email info@ncbi.ie. Of course, we always appreciate your support of NCBI, and if you'd like to make a donation to help support our services, you can do that through donate.ncbi.ie. Just before we go, just a reminder of what we'll be talking about in future live events. We're going to be talking about the Blind Shell 2, so that's going to be coming up in our next live event. I think Daniel and Joe mentioned the Blind Shell 2 there, but we'll have a little bit more of a deeper look at that in our next live event. We're also going to be talking about some of the points from the Site Tech Global event. We're going to be talking about the NCBI Smart Hub soon as well. And of course, the start of the next year, in January, we're going to have the World Braille Day is going to be coming up on January 4th, I think, the event on January 4th. So we'll be talking about that then. Just a reminder that our next show is in 2 weeks' time, Tuesday, December 7th, at the usual time of 2:30.
That's the last one of the year, Jude?
So that's going to be, that's the next one. Yeah, so just one left. We'll have reached 60 at that point. So
One before Christmas.
60. I tell you what, 60 in these 2 years. We've covered a lot of stuff, and there's a few new changes as well coming next year to the live event. So we'll still be bringing plenty of quality content, but there'll be a few changes to the format, even a change of name coming up. Imagine that. So keep your eyes open for that, and listen out for the changes. We'll talk about that maybe in our next live event as well. If you want to stay up to date with what's happening on our live events, as well as plenty more tips and news as well, you can subscribe to our newsletter on our website, or you can email us at labs@ncbi.ie if you'd like to do that. So all that's left for me to do today is to thank our guests, Leonie Watson, Joe Lonergan and Adela Bulleman. And of course, thanks to everyone for listening in as well. From Daniel and myself, goodbye for now, and we look forward to having you all back with us soon for another NCBI Labs live event.